Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Idea Academy stream. This is our Thursday stream that we do every single week here on Twitch and on definitely go if you are on YouTube. Don't hesitate to check out the Twitch channel. If you are on Twitch, don't forget, jump over and subscribe to the YouTube. I am bringing you regular content on a weekly basis about growing your life, your character, your communication, your relationships, your business, whatever it is you're looking for growth in. I have strategies for you. I have tips. Aliman, welcome in. How are you doing? Rose Nightshade, hello, hello. How are you? Guitar, good to see you. Head of Steel, I saw you as well. Of course, Wit and Kitty Cat. Good to see all of you guys. Welcome in all the things. How is everybody doing? Listen, fire off in the chat, guys. Let me know how it's going. Wit, I want to know how the new little shaver is. The shaver. Kat, I got a chance to talk to you this morning a little bit in our coffee chats. By the way, wherever you happen to be watching right now, you can go. Let's see. If you are on Twitch, it's exclamation Discord, and that will get you a link to the Discord, which is where we have all kinds of different conversations about all kinds of different things. But every morning at 8 a.m., I do a coffee chat, and it's literally that if you've not been to one of these chats yet, it's just me sitting in this chair, usually in like a hoodie, with a cup of coffee, and we just talk about whatever's going on that morning. So it's nothing formal, but it's a lot of fun. So you should come check it out. Let's see. Yes, yes, lol. Hey, there's Rob and Aliman. Let's go. Aliman, how is the new job? Oh, wait, you're not in the new job. You're still on garden duty. Is that what it's called? I think. 8 a.m. Yes, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you. Baby girl is good. She just ate and is now napping. Adorable. I love it. I love napping babies. We have a frog at my house now. This is a very interesting thing. There's now a frog that lives in my house. The froggy pirate princess, who is what we call my daughter. She got it for her birthday. It is a white tree frog, which is an Australian tree frog. It's quite an interesting little animal. It eats crickets and it's nocturnal. It comes out at night. It's a whole thing. Yes, gardening leave until February. All right, man. Well, I am excited to hear what's gonna happen next. 8 a.m. my time. That is correct. That's 8 a.m. Let's do the math. It's 8 a.m. Pacific. That's gonna be 9 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Central, which is where I just was, 11 a.m. Eastern, and then if we go all the way over to the new to the UK, that's gonna be 16 in the afternoon. So 4 p.m. Yes, every single day I'm doing coffee chats, except for when I don't because I'm in Nebraska, which is where I just came from. So that is that, guys. It's been a week. It's been a couple of weeks, right? There's a lot going on in the world right now, and I'm feeling it. I'm there's it just feels like everything is very big right now. Are you feeling this in your life? Do you feel like everything is big, kind of overwhelming, and you're not really sure where the path through it is? And it seems like we all just need a moment to breathe, to collect ourselves, and to set our intentions for what's coming next. Pet frogs are totally awesome. That is true. Thank you. 11 Eastern Standard Time. Yes, such a week. Yeah, it has been a week. It's been a week. How are you guys feeling? How are you feeling? Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling bad? Are you feeling hopeful? Are you feeling hopeless? One of the things that I want to talk about today is I want to talk about disappointment. Disappointment. And I wonder how you disappointment in your life. So let me set the stage here a little bit. I went to Nebraska with my father, and we went, and the reason that we went was to visit my grandma, who's 94 years old, and we'll get to more of that a little bit later. But the other reason that we went is because we wanted to go and watch a Nebraska football game. We went to Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was the first time I'd been there in 40 years. It had been a long time. First time my dad had been there in probably almost that long as well. And we wanted to see a game. And it was Nebraska was playing UCLA. UCLA was a team that was 2-5. It was going to be an easy victory. And we went and we watched the game, and it was terrible. Nebraska played terrible football for 4 quarters. And as a result, they got beat by UCLA. And let me tell you, there was a lot of disappointment in that stadium. Now, I've been a Nebraska football fan my whole life. There's been a fair share of disappointment over the last 20 years when it comes to the Nebraska football team. But this was palpable. Palpable. There was disappointment in the crowd. Head of Steel, you're feeling worn out. You feel all right, oddly enough. I'm glad you feel all right, Wit. I'm glad you do. We've got to find the place where we can feel all right, right? Because those of you who are here, you're different from everybody else. Now, I'm not saying a thing, right, about people who aren't here. What I am saying is if you're here, there's a reason that you're here. And hopefully the reason that you're here is just not because you're being nice to me and showing up. But hopefully the reason that you're here is because you understand that you've got bigger things to do in life. That this moment that we're in, this small moment, is not everything, that there is more that we have to do more. If you are called to a place where you know that there are better things, there are higher things, there are more important things that need to be done, then you know what that pull is, you know what that draw is, you know what that call is on your life. And what you may not know is that that's not just a call, it's not just a draw, it's not just a pull. When you are called to higher things, it becomes a responsibility. And I hope that you're here because you are ready to shoulder the responsibility of meeting your moment of greatness. That's what it's all about. Got to talk a little bit about how to move through disappointment. So I'm curious about how you do that. Hit me up in the chat. Let me know if you have a way that you deal with disappointment, or if you have something that you think about disappointment. Tell me tell me what that looks like in the chat. I've taken some notes as I've gone through the day, and I have kind of three steps, three different stages of dealing with disappointment that I've kind of carved out as a framework for my own life, and hopefully these will be meaningful to you as well. Because the danger of disappointment is that it leads you to inactivity. And this is really the danger of any failure, and disappointment and failure are different, right? Because you could, for example, I'll go there, right? You could be disappointed in the outcome of the recent election here in the United States. To be disappointed in that. But that's not failure for you. You didn't fail, right? Presumably you voted the way that you believed. You did the things that you thought you should do. So you didn't fail, but you still didn't achieve the outcome, or the outcome wasn't achieved that you had hoped for. Same thing with my Nebraska Cornhuskers team, right? I went and watched them. I had high hopes. I didn't fail. I showed up, right? I bought my ticket. I yelled at the refs when they made bad calls. It wasn't a failure on my part, but it was a disappointment. It was a moment that was out of my control. And here I land, disappointed as a result. The the danger of disappointment in our lives is that it can drive us towards that inactivity. It can drive us towards disenfranchisement. It can drive us towards, I'm gonna use the word nihilism, right? Nihilism, however you like to say it, which and we're gonna start, by the way, I haven't mentioned this. We're gonna start a book club on this book right here, The Seven Frequencies of Communication. This is gonna be our next book that we go through. Here, we'll go through it chapter by chapter. I know I've plugged it a little bit already, but we're gonna go through it. But my core frequency, I don't know if you can see this is the sticker sheet. My core frequency is right here. It's the Maven. And the shadow of the Maven, or when the Maven experiences their darkest place, it is that. It's the nihilist or the nihilist. It's the place where it becomes hard to see a way through. So I've had to develop structures in my life for dragging myself out of that. And I'm gonna be very open and honest. when I say this is a newer thing for me, there were a lot of years where when I couldn't see the way forward, when I couldn't see the way out, it seemed like there was no way forward and there was no way out. And it wasn't until the last few years that I kind of have begun to figure out, okay, how do we deal with disappointment? What do we do with this? And how do we move away from inactivity and towards activity? Because if you know anything about me, you know that one of the things that I always say is that in any case, if you want to elevate, you must move away from inactivity and towards activity. You must move away from the passive and towards the active. That must always, always be the case. So I'm going to give you three simple steps, a 3 point strategy for dealing with disappointment, for handling disappointment in a positive way. The first one is this: you have to acknowledge and reflect. So, the thing that you have to be careful about when it comes to disappointment is feeling like you have to just immediately move on from it. That you have to immediately, go to something else. That you have to immediately take action because while you do need to take action, if you don't pause and acknowledge the feeling of disappointment, then at some point that's going to pop back up. And we're going to talk a little bit later. One of the questions that I got in the question, the anonymous question, which by the way, that link is it's pinned both in the YouTube and in the Twitch chat, where you can go and you can ask anonymous questions. But one of the questions that I got was, what is the difference? How do we differentiate between life coaching and therapy? So life coaching being one of the things that I do, therapy being one of the things that I don't do. Right? How do we differentiate between? You have to allow yourself to feel the disappointment, the feeling of the disappointment without judgment. And this is where you have to be intentional about separating yourself from the moment. So it's really easy to get dragged down into the gravity of everything is terrible, everything is ruined, everything is gone. You need to feel that. And I'm going to go back to Lisa Feldman Barrett, who wrote an amazing book that's called How Emotions Are Made. And one of the things that Lisa Feldman Barrett says is that if we want to be in better control of our emotions, and we can control our emotions, it is neurologically incorrect that our emotions are just triggered and we just have to live with them. We do have the ability to create our own emotional world, and I won't go into all the details of that because it's a long book. But one of the things you have to do is you have to be able to be granular about how you name. So when you're feeling that sense of disappointment, what is it that you're really feeling? Is it frustration? Is it sadness? Are you mourning something? Is it anger at the injustice of the situation? What is it? So give yourself the time to feel the feelings and name the feelings. But remember that it's not always productive to act out of the feelings that we feel. And so this is where I've gotten myself into trouble in the past because something would happen, I would become disappointed. I would look at the state of the world and I would say, "Oh, everything is terrible." And what I would be feeling was anger over the injustice of the situation, and I would act out of that anger. And as a result, the message that I was trying to take to the world became diminished because I acted out of the emotion of anger instead of pausing, recognizing the emotion and trying to determine whether or not that emotion was going to push me forward towards the best future, or whether it was going to hold me back in a past that I didn't want. Have you ever been there? Have you ever experienced that moment? Feel like you're just stuck in a past that you don't want, or you feel like you're just stuck in a present that you don't want. You have to move past that, but you can't start until you acknowledge what it is that you're feeling. Think about the outcome, right? So the outcome of that ball game or that, that election or whatever it was, why did it matter to you? Because if you're able to name that, why it mattered to you, if you're able to really be specific about what caused the disappointment that you're experiencing, then that can help you identify where your next move, because make no mistake about it, processing everything, anything that you ever process should be about your next step. Anything that you ever process, whether it be in your past or your present, should always be about building a better future for yourself. So this is why I don't like the phrase, and I've had people use it with me. They say we have to sit in our feelings, sit in our feelings, sit with this, and I say no. I don't sit in my feelings. I acknowledge my feelings, and I use my feelings as diagnostics to figure out what my next step has to be. So step one is acknowledge the feelings, be specific, granular, reflect. Don't stay there. Don't stay in step one. You got to move to step two. Step two is reframe and learn. Okay, let's say let's pause. I got a question here. Let's say disappointment is derived from an emotional investment. What's next? So, head of steel. The key there is to figure out what's the core of the emotional investment. So why are you emotionally invested in that thing? I'm going to use myself in the football game, right? Because it's kind of a dumb example, but it's a good example. Why am I emotionally invested in a football team? Well, there's a couple of different things that I can acknowledge, right? One of those things is that's a part of my heritage. And so because I was born in Nebraska and because, my whole life I grew up with Nebraska football, and because Nebraska football at one point was a great program that was winning national championships in the 90s, I have a deep emotional investment in that. But why do I have that deep investment? Well, it's tied to my memories of the past. And in many ways, it's tied to my identity of who I am. And so if my identity is somehow, connected to this team, then I have to figure out, okay, well, then what's the next thing that I have to do? Maybe it's identity work. Maybe it's that I need to figure out how to create an identity for myself that is outside of that moment. Or maybe it's I need to figure out, is there a way that I can actually affect the situation? So emotional investment comes from somewhere. The key to finding the next step or the next move, the next move of the piece on the chessboard is to trying to figure out where is that emotional investment anchored? Where is it anchored? Where does it come from? Is that valuable? Because if my investment in the football team is just about, me being nostalgic or those things, is that profitable? Is that something I want to hold on to? Maybe the action is letting go of that investment. Maybe it's not, right? Ember, hello. Dropping in for a minute, say, I'm having a great day. Thank you, Ember. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thanks for popping in to say hello. So, but that's going to take us to step two, right? So once we've figured out what is it that I'm feeling, why am I feeling that way? What is this? Where does this come from? What's the attachment? Then we can reframe. So we acknowledge, and then we're going to reframe. And reframing is a process of trying to shift our perspective by looking at the experience as a learning opportunity. And so, how can we look at every experience as a learning opportunity? This is tricky. So it's much easier when it's your experience, right? So let's say I get fired from a job and I go back and I look at that. In fact, I was fired from a job. We've talked about this. So 30 years ago, I was fired from a job. And looking back, the way that I reframed that was what do I learn from this? What are the points that I can take away from this that I can use to make my future a better place? And so for me, it was in that particular job, I had not worked very hard at building a team around myself. I not worked very hard at making connections to people. I thought I had the right answers. And so I was using those answers in place of actually making those human connections, bringing people along with me. So instead of bringing people along with me, I was leading in a way that I thought was leading and expecting people to follow. So the lesson that I learned from that is you cannot lead people unless you connect with people. I was listening to a podcast, or it was on YouTube with Jocko Willink, who uh, wrote this amazing book, which is called Extreme Ownership. And I was listening to this YouTube video with him today, and he was talking about he's an ex Navy SEAL, and he talked about, you know, people who say, well, sometimes you just have to tell people what to do. You just have to bark orders. And his perspective is, if you have to bark orders, you've failed because you've failed to create clarity about what the mission is. And he's like, there's going to be a time when there's an emergency and you've got to tell people what to do. You've got to bark those orders out. But those times should be few and far between. If they aren't, then you're failing as a leader because you're not creating clarity around the mission. So you have to create clarity for yourself in your own life. What can I take away from this? Right? Let's go to the football game, right? The football game's the innocuous example. Then I'll go to the election. What can I take away from the football game? Well, what I can take away is that sometimes when we try to do, in this particular case, when we try to do the same things in the same way over and over, and we rely on the talent of the people who are executing those things, that's a surefire way to get yourself defeated when your opponent understands those plays, those moves. The question that I would have to ask myself in the broader sense is, if I'm attacking something and I'm going head on with it and I'm trying to push through it and I just keep hitting the same brick wall again and again and again, when do I let go? Right? When do I change tactics? How do I change tactics? Where do I go differently? When do I stop relying on my own strengths or my own talents or those of the people that are around me? And when do I change the play? So that's a learning, right? That I can take from that. How could I adjust my approach? Because if we look, and we should, if we look at everything in the universe as a learning opportunity, then we begin to recognize that, you know what? Setbacks are going to happen, but as long as we have an ability to learn something from those setbacks, we have the ability to change our own future. And this will move to the global scale eventually, because if enough of us are dedicated to changing our own future, eventually the future will be changed for the better. There's a certain amount of optimism, certain amount of positivity that simply has to be built into your mindset if you're going to do great things. And so that's a good place to start, is the belief that I will control what I can control, is myself, and I will believe that if I can take that message of what I believe to other people, that it will also change them. And that if enough people are changed one by one by one by one, eventually can make a change in the world. So that's a part of reframing. That's a part of using everything from a learning standpoint. Now I'll go to the election. And the question becomes, what can we learn from the election? Why did the one party win, the other party lose? I'll tell you, I was talking to Hedda Steele about this on our call the other day, but here is what I believe. I believe that what you had in this last election was, you had one party that had a very, very strong, very, very clear message. It is not a message that I agreed with, but it was very strong, very clear. And you had another party that found itself behind the eight ball, and rather than taking the time to put together what that message was going to be, they sort of picked and chose what they thought would connect to all of these different groups, and it was almost like a message being created by committee. As a result, it felt weak. It wasn't strong enough to stand up because it was inauthentic. They had a candidate and they did not allow that candidate to fully be herself, because if they had, I think they would have had a much stronger moment, a much stronger showing than they actually did. So the lesson that we can learn from this is authenticity is going to win, right? Authenticity is going to win. People are often going to choose, and this is not great, it's not right, it's not wrong, right? But people are often going to choose someone who is there, they believe is authentic, even if that person is wrong, over someone who doesn't quite get to vulnerability, no matter how right they are. So that's another example of a lesson that we can learn is how do we learn to be our own authentic selves? How do we move away from having our opinion defined by committee? How do we stay true to what we really believe and really laser focus on that and not mitigate those things, right? Because it's not a the world is not a popularity contest. The world is for those of us who aspire to greatness, like you do. The world is really about affecting change. I know I have friends who believe that the way to affect change. I'm gonna This is a little bit of a tangent, but I have friends who believe that the way to affect change is just by being political enough with enough people, and I'm being political in the sense of just cozy up to the right people. We just get the right people on our side, then we're gonna make all of this difference. I think that's the case. I think that those alliances that we forge when we're being real political and real schmoozy with people and really trying to, I'm going to use the word pandering, right? And I'm not saying that anybody has been doing this, but when we're pandering to people, when we're telling them what they want to hear, right? Instead of what we really believe. Number one, there's no courage in that. And we have to be courageous. It's going to be great. And number two, they're going to know. And at some point, those political alliances will break down because they're not built on truth. They're not built on anything solid. I think that was a part of the problem. So, okay, so now we reframe and learn. We figure out what can I learn from this moment, even if I didn't participate directly in it. What can I learn from this moment that will lead me to the future? I'll tell you. I had a friend last night, and we were joking around a little bit, kind of little bit of gallows humor, I guess. But the joke was that this person like, hey, I'm really upset. Like I need to plan, and then she goes into planning mode when she gets to a place where she's upset. Like I need to plan. I need an action plan. And what do you got? What's your plan? And I said, first of all, I'm not a I'm not a plan guy. I don't have the genius of invention. I'm a discerner, but I do have a competency. So she's like, come on, you got to give me something. And so I said, well, okay. What I would say is if, you know, if you really wanted to have somebody that was electable, that was able to be put in office, we're talking locally here at this stage, right? Then what we would do is we would find a young person who believed in the things that we believed in, and we would coach them using all of our skills. I'm a communicator, right? And this person is, and so we would use all of the skills that we had to coach this person as best as we possibly could. And then we was kind of joking. I said, also we've got a theater background and we know casting people. We could even do it as a casting call, right? And look for the go through that casting process to find somebody that was really we really believed was authentic and believed in the things that we believe in. And again, it was a joke, right? But that's the idea, right? Is where do you find that moment where you say, okay, I understand that I didn't have an effect on that system, but how could I have an effect on the world? Where's the effect that I could possibly have? So take that for what it will. Using it even outside of those boundaries, though, when you encounter a moment of disappointment, first stage should be to acknowledge and reflect, name your feelings. Your second Your second stage should be to reframe that as a learning opportunity. Where can I learn from this? Even if it wasn't my action, where can I learn what I might do differently in the future? And then the number three stage of this would be commit or recommit to action. So once you've processed your disappointment, your feelings, kind of learned from the experience, once you've learned the lessons that you can, then the first thing, and this goes with anything, guys. This goes with failure as well. So this I'll take this back to a place where if you ever experience a personal failure, same thing. Figure out what it is you're feeling, what that makes you feel. Figure out how to reframe that failure as a learning experience. But then next, just set an actionable step forward. So whatever it is, choose something and do it. What can you do? What can you do differently? Maybe it won't affect the outcome of whatever that was, right? Like I'm not going to be able to affect necessarily the outcome of the football game that I was talking about before, but what can I do differently based on what I've learned? Where in my life am I trying to bang against the same strategy again and again and again? Maybe the step is I need to evaluate the strategies that I'm using. Heck, it's occurring to me right now. That's exactly what I have needed to do. I've talked about this a little bit before I went away about how in the streaming category, I had encountered a little bit of self-resistance. I'd come to a place where kind of hard for me to move because I felt like I was stuck. I was stuck in a rut. Well, this is a great lesson for me. I was continuing with the same strategy again and again and again, expecting it to work instead of trying a different play. Maybe I don't commit to that option for the entire game. Maybe I don't spend the rest of the quarter under center, but maybe for that play, for that drive, that's what I need. Is a change up, a little razzle dazzle, something different. So maybe that's the lesson for me out of that game is that, hey, compare that to your experience and run a different play, write a different playbook, get a new coordinator up in here, somebody to give me some more ideas. I've got amazing advisors and I'm super grateful for them, but am I remembering to ask them for their great ideas? If I'm not, then I'm probably going to fail, right? So, step 3 is recommit to action. Now, this could be adjusting a goal, right? So, maybe the goal that you have, I'm going over here, but maybe I realize now that where I actually need to be going is over here, right? So, in the case of my streaming experience, I was driving for a bigger audience, but in fact, my goal was wrong. My eyes were on the wrong thing. What my eyes needed to be on were on how I could serve and add value to the people that I already had there and to bring new people in who needed the support that I could give and that the community could give. I had to shift my goal away from, getting more people, numbers, whatever else, and shift my goal towards helping other people grow in the ways that they wanted to. So it might be shifting a goal. It might be changing a strategy. I talked about that. It might be sometimes it's just reaffirming your commitment to keep moving. Do you ever do that? Do you ever spend time like just reaffirming I commit to moving today? There's this amazing song in Frozen 2, that amazing philosophical work in Frozen 2, which is do the next right thing, right? There's this moment where, spoilers, I guess, for a movie that's I don't know how many years old. But there's this moment where, Anna's at the end of a rope and she has this song, next right thing, do the next right thing. How often are you reaffirming your commitment to do the next right thing? Just keep, just keep going. There is this story that I love in the book of Exodus. I'll go biblical for a moment. You can out if this is not your jam, but there's a story I love in the book of Exodus. It's about the Exodus, right? It's about the Israelites coming out of Egypt, and Moses is leading, and now you've got Charlton Heston in your mind, and they come up against the Red Sea, and they come up against the Red Sea, and there's the sea in front of them, and they can't go through, they can't go past it because it's too deep. And then behind them are all the chariots and all the soldiers of Egypt. And Moses, I love this. There's this moment where Moses, he's super, super self assured. He's super like, don't worry about it. Like, I talked to God. He made, there was a snake, there was a burning bush, there was a whole thing, right? There's plagues. Don't worry about it. I got this. I'm going to talk to God. And Moses goes and he's like, I am going to cry out to God, and he's going to take care of this for me. So Moses goes and he cries out to God, and God says, and this is possibly one of my favorite quotes of all time from the Bible. God says to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to move." And sure enough, as soon as the people move forward, and as soon as they step into the waters, then the waters recede, and they're able to walk. And because sometimes the lesson here, again, whatever you believe, the lesson that's being taught to us here is that sometimes the way through simply to take the next step. And sometimes any step is okay. Don't let yourself get bogged down in analysis paralysis. There was a whole thing. Yeah, exactly. There was a whole thing. There's a whole thing. There was a snake and a pharaoh, and there was, I don't know, Charlton Heston was there. Just take a step, any step, move forward, and then take this. Keep this in mind too, right? What do I always say? When you feel down, when you feel like you don't have energy, when you feel in despair, when you feel hurt, when you feel sadness, when you feel sorrow, what what is the best medicine? The best medicine is service. And boy, some people hate this. Some people hate it so bad. Oh, well, you're just medicating yourself by helping other people out. You're just avoiding your own feelings because you're out there helping other people. Let me tell you, that is the human design. And if you don't believe me, ask a neurologist, because the fact of the matter is our brains are designed service, connection, all of those good things, all of those good hormones, that oxytocin, right? And the dopamine and all of those things. All of those things are activated by acts of serving other people. So if you want to stop feeling bad, find someone to help. Find someone who can help. Help them. Because I guarantee you, you'll get a lift out of it. And once you get a lift out of it, I find out that it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. Now, I'm not going to say that things in the state of the world aren't going to affect us, right? I'm not going to say that there's not darkness out there, that there's not bad stuff out there. We know that for a fact. There will always be evil. There will always be injustice in this world. But if we commit ourselves to doing the next right thing, if we commit ourselves to being a light, then the darkness, at least in our own little corner, it's gonna retreat. So find somebody to serve, find somebody to help, find a way to be light in the darkness, and keep moving. Don't stop. Just keep going. You have everything that you need to move to the next step, to move out of despair, to move out of sadness, move out of depression. You have the ability to do it. You must access it inside yourself. Must get to the next place, and you will only do action. Love it. I love it. I love it. So that's the three steps right there, right? And the other thing about sorry, I'm looking at my notes. The other thing about recommitting to action is that acting gets you out of your head, for one thing, right? Because when I'm acting, it means I'm not just sitting there and ruminating, right? I'm not just running things over in my mind. So it gets me out of my head. But also, if I set small goals, then when I achieve those, I'm going to start to become more confident. And as I become more confident, I will become more willing to take bigger and bigger and bigger steps. And most important of all, taking that action reminds you that you are in control of your own destiny. Now, there are things in your life that you will not be able to control. You have to just accept those things. That there are things in your life that you can't control. Maybe it's the place that you were born, or the disadvantages that you had growing up. Maybe it's a physical issue of some kind. Maybe it's something entirely different. Maybe it's a sickness. But those things you can't control. What can you control? Focus on that. Keep moving forward. Do what you know is right. Do the next right thing. Do what you know is best. Serve other people. If you're in a moment of despair right now, let me invite you to take action. Any action that makes someone's life better. Because what we do for ourselves will always be temporary. What we do for ourselves will die with us. But what we do for others, it will have ripples that move into each other. So that's my 3 steps. That is my 3 steps for dealing with disappointment. Acknowledge and reflect, reframe and learn, and recommit to action. Hopefully those are helpful or useful in some way to you. If they are, let me know. If they're not, let me know also. We'll figure that out as we go. That's what I've got. I want to go to there was another question that somebody asked me, and the question that was in here was, how do you differentiate? It was an interesting question. How do you differentiate between life coaching and therapy? So what is life coaching and what is therapy? So what I do in many cases could be defined as life coaching. I don't really like to lump myself in as a life coach per se, because what I do is more about coaching for performance. It's more about coaching for elevating whatever it is that you want. So life coaching can be that sometimes. It's not always about that. But I think there's a certain stigma around life coaching. When people hear it, they think, oh, this is going to be somebody who's going to come in and they're just going to like tell me to think about my life and my inner child and all that stuff. And that's not really what I like to do, right? So I'll tell you what my belief in the type of coaching that I do, and the type of coaching, or the type of coaching that I do as compared to what you would get out of therapy. So there are um there are a few differences. The first difference is the focus, right? So when you are dealing with therapy, which, by the way, I am a high proponent of therapy. I'm not saying that both are not necessary or even good or even necessary, because I think that having a coach is really important. I think everybody should have a coach. Listen, guys, I have a coach. As a coach, I have a coach. I would never hire a coach that didn't have a coach, right? So I think everybody should have a coach, because I think everybody should have somebody who's doing what I'm going to tell you coaches do in a moment. But I also think that there are at least times when we need therapy. What does therapy do? Therapy is primarily focused around healing. So when therapists are working with clients, it's usually they're exploring a lot of things about their past experience. They're exploring a lot of things about kind of unresolved psychological issues that are causing them some kind of emotional distress that they need to unpack. And therapy is usually geared towards helping people address their trauma, their mental health, um, just the things that are interfering with their life, holding them back emotionally, right? Now, coaching, on the other hand, the type of coaching that I do is not focused so much on the past, it is more focused on the future. So, coaching is all about growth and achieving your goals, right? So, getting to the next level at whatever it is you identify next level. I have one client, for example, that I'm working with, and we're almost to the end, in fact, of their sessions. And this particular client is in an industry where productivity, there are measurables around productivity. So, the reason they hired me was because they needed to get to a certain level of productivity. That was their goal. They brought a coach in specifically to help clarify that goal, to help create actionable plans around it, and then develop strategies to overcome obstacles. So coaches in life are much like coaches on the football field or in any sport, right? It's our job to help you build strategies to get to the place where you want to get. Therapists are there to help you remove some of the internal obstacles that may come from your past. May come from mental health. We as coaches, we're primarily focused on the um, for therapy. Typically, right, and not typically, right, but therapists are licensed professionals, and they are psychologists, right? They may have gone undergone social work, um, related fields to that. They're required to adhere to very specific standards. Now, coaches, we're not typically licensed, although we are typically certified. And so there are bodies that certify coaches. We do study some of the same things. We do study psychology. We study sociology. Um, we, we train, but we train specifically not necessarily to help you out of those emotional places, but really to help you gain clarity on where it is you need to go and what you need to do to get there. That makes sense. And as coaches, we're not qualified to diagnose anything. We will often tell you, "Hey, you should probably see a therapist," right? When those things come up. But we're very open and honest about the fact that, hey, you know what? If you have depression, I can give you some reflections in my life of how I've been able to do depression, but I can't diagnose that, and I can't specifically work on that depression with. What I can do is I can work on your goals. True, but if you're saying, "Hey, I'm depressed, I can't move because of my anxiety," I can give you some personal strategies, but I will refer you to a licensed therapist to deal with. And then the last thing is kind of like the first thing again. It's just past versus future. So therapists typically are going to be focused on helping you understand what's happening in your past, help heal you in the present. Coaches are primarily focused on figuring out where you are now and where you want to. So that's a little bit about the difference between the two. If you have more questions, of course, don't hesitate to ask. I am more than glad. I'm an open book, guys. That's the bottom line. I use a lot of different tools in my coaching practice. Um, I use the six types of working genius. I've certainly talked about that a million times here, and I do use that as a tool to help people understand themselves and where they come from and how they specifically approach work. And all of life is work. So I know that doesn't necessarily sound like a great thing, but all of life is work, right? Relationships are work. The reason relationships have a tendency to fall apart is because people don't understand that relationships are work. Sometimes we expect them just to kind of be their own thing and to work out on their own, but that's not actually the way that it works. You have to be focused. You have to have strategy for approaching relationships and for being successful in work. Obviously, the world of work is certainly work. So if you're having problems at work, if you're having issues with maybe your boss or maybe your productivity or having ideas, those are the types of things that a coach can help you out with. But I would love to extend the opportunity to anybody here. If you're interested in seeing what a coach does and what a coach can do for you, you can book a session with me completely free. Here, let me. In fact, I'll post a link for you quick. But you can book a session with me, 30 minutes. It is completely free, and what we'll do is we'll sit down and we will try to determine exactly where it is that you're at, where you want to be, and see if there's a way that I can help bridge from one place to the other. What if you have a coworker that follows you home? That so for that, so if you had depression or anxiety, I would refer you to a therapist. If you have a coworker that follows you home, I would refer you to the police. There are professionals for everything. Yeah, so I'm going to hang on. Let me put out real quick a link here, guys. If anybody has any interest in booking a session with me, this is completely free. It is something that I offer and cost you nothing. 30 minutes. There you go, right there. That's my calendar. You can book time on my calendar. Oh, paste. No, I put it both in the YouTube and and in the Twitch. By the way, if you are watching on YouTube or if you're watching the replay, can I ask you for a favor real quick? If you've gotten this far, we're an hour in at this point. If you've gotten this far, can I just ask you, could you just subscribe to the channel? It would be amazing if you would. So if you've gotten any kind of value out of this content, If there's anything at all, if you wouldn't mind just subscribing to the channel, I appreciate you. Those of you on Twitch who are subscribed and who are followers, of course, I appreciate you guys greatly as well. But definitely trying to grow that YouTube channel as a way to get the word out to people. Hey, Arf, just lurking, but I wanted to unlurk to say you have a DM after your stream. Thank you. I appreciate that, Emily. I do. I do. So let's see here. Think that is about all that I had for the day. Anything else, guys? Any other questions? Anything? We're coming up to an hour here, and I know that I had said that I'm going to take these a little bit longer. But if I don't have anything else to say, I'm not gonna. And drop a like. Yes, please drop a like on the YouTube as well. You can drop a like. That would be lovely. If you guys would share this, if there's anything that you found valuable, if you would share it, that would be amazing as well. Just listen. Here's the thing. My message is that you you can be great. You have the ability to be great. You've got everything you need to be great. And if you're starting to believe that, it's time that you stepped up into that moment. And it's time that you changed the way that you see the world. Because a lot of us see the world kind of like the Matrix, back to the old Matrix movie, right? A lot of us see the world around us and we think that that's the real world. But here's a shocker for you: you don't live in the real world. Everything that you see around you, that's not the real world. The real world is the universe of possibilities that are created by your choices and actions. And if you want to elevate, if you want to go to the next level, if you want to go to the next place, you have everything that you need to do it inside of you. Now, you may need to gain some additional things, right? Some skills, some knowledge, some information, but you have everything that you need to gain those things. Don't sell yourself. You can do it. All right, guys. That's it for me. Anybody else? Any other questions? Any last minute thing? No, nothing. Very, very good. Well, if there's nothing else, then I want to thank you guys so much again for hanging out with me today. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you guys. I hope that you've gotten something useful out of this today. I hope that you will go out and will commit to action, or you will recommit to action. That you will take yourself to the next level. Because as always, you have a moment of greatness that is waiting for you, but it is not coming for you. It's up to you to pursue your moment. I know you're going to do it. I believe in you. I love you guys. Thank you for hanging out. Now, go be great.